welcome to VIA's Support Raising Podcast. We're excited to bring you a special series that is pulled from recordings related to our Support Raising Leaders Conference in 2026. These are our workshop speakers and their expert level content, but we wanted to pull out some of the specific topics and speakers because their content applied to such a broader audience and we didn't want you to miss out. I'm your host today, Callie Davis, part of the VIA Generosity team in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I'm very excited to be joined not by just an expert, but a very dear friend of mine, Kathy Wilson. Kathy is our coaching specialist here at VIA, so she is one of the VIA team, but she is coming with not just a lot of personal experience, but a lot of professional experience in the world of coaching, from accreditation with the International Coaching Federation, with also credentialing as an academic coach, and then also just years of experience from internationally serving the US, finally joining the VIA team right about the same time I did in 2019. Kathy, I am so excited for you to join us today, both because I like chatting with you, but also you always bring such good nuggets of learning and insight and encouragement. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I know that for me, learning how to help others when they feel stuck has been instrumental in my coaching. So I'm excited to share just a little bit of what I've learned.
Wonderful. And that is absolutely what Kathy's here to talk about today, the enemy within helping coaches get unstuck. And I think I really resonated with that title as far as the helping coaches get unstuck. That I think is a common feeling with support raisers, that they just hit a wall, they hit a barrier that feels like it's insurmountable. But I'm curious, Kathy, what resonated with you about this topic? Why was this something that you wanted to dive into with leaders?
I think for me personally, being on the other side, having hit some of those barriers and feeling stuck and not knowing how to move forward at all, and feeling stuck alone, I think, was the thing that was really hard for me. And I would love for others to know you don't have to be stuck, and you don't have to be stuck alone. And there is real hope for moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. I love that vision and that passion of hope. Yeah. That's really beautiful. Now, I think I'd love a little insight as far as like what's a key example, because before our audience and our listeners go every which direction of interpreting feeling stuck and stuck around support raising, specifically what are you wanting to dive into today?
Well, I think for those of us who are coaching others, I think that this is a tool as a support raiser you can use on yourself. Absolutely. There'll be a handout that you can walk through the process yourself. For those of you who are coaching, I think that oftentimes we hear things that our coachees are saying, and it's easy for us to miss some of the key phrases that they use to let us know that they are actually believing something that needs to have a shift to it, because the way that they are looking at the world, the way that they're looking at the situation, the way that they're looking at themselves is actually what's keeping them stuck. And so if we can watch out for some of these key phrases, then we can use a very simple process to help them see how what they're believing is keeping them stuck, and how we can actually then reframe it for them so they can move forward.
Yeah, I love that. And limiting beliefs is something I've heard you talk about before. And is there kind of a clinical definition or like a kind of a broad definition that then we can kind of unpack a little bit?
Absolutely. Everybody has limiting beliefs. They're perceptions, thoughts that we have about ourselves, about others, about the world, and they often limit us because these perceptions and thoughts, they prevent us from doing something that actually we're quite capable of doing. Even though we don't think that we can do it, we are absolutely capable, and that's how they keep us stuck.
Okay, yeah, that, I feel like that applies to every area of life.
Absolutely.
Like everywhere.
Yes.
Are there some like kind of broad buckets of limiting belief? Because it feels like a really big idea that makes a lot of sense, but I also don't want to miss something here.
So I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me is listening for some key phraseology that people use. So some examples that we will see in the support raising world, you'll hear people say things like, I shouldn't. And then look, when you hear I shouldn't, that's kind of a key for, oh, there's a belief right there that's limiting them. So it's, I shouldn't ask people for money because, I mean, nobody really has money right now. We're in a recession. Or another key phrase, I can't. So I can't talk about money with my family or friends because of XYZ. I'm not as good as is another one. So I'm not as good at, I don't provide as good as ministry as maybe my church provides, or this other church provides, or this other ministry. And my church doesn't even support me. So they don't believe I'm as good as, I can't do this. One of the things I've heard some support raisers say is, I can't do this because this only works for extroverts, right?
Yep.
I've heard I shouldn't need to raise that much. Pastors have multiple jobs. This is a big one. I'm afraid. This is something that holds support raisers back so many times. As we look at support raising training and we dive into what are some of the things, some of those roadblocks for people as they are raising support, fear is that number one roadblock, right? And so it's, I'm afraid I will lose all of my friends. I'm afraid of fill in the blank. So some of these key phrases of I shouldn't, I can't, I'm not, I'm afraid, or others will think I'm ungrateful, fill in the blank, however you want to. So those are some key phrases that help us to know that, oh, I'm believing something that is holding me back, and I need to figure out what the truth is behind this belief. Or as coaches, the same, to help our coachee figure out what is actually the truth behind this.
Yeah. Wow. I hear those. I'm going to be honest, those sound even bigger than just someone getting stuck. Those phrases sound like, to me, that sounds like the beginning of the end for people in the middle of support raising. That if that isn't dealt with, like how do they move forward ever?
Yes, this is the problem. If we don't, that's exactly what happens. If we do not address these limiting beliefs, then we end up being confused, stuck, paralyzed, fearful, frustrated, and it's this endless loop. And that is why recognizing what these beliefs are at their core and then dealing with them provides hope.
Wow. Yeah. Now I'm going to be honest, I'm a little overwhelmed about how to deal with them because it seems so important, so vital, and that sounds like a really big responsibility.
It actually is a lot easier than it sounds. I know that these are big phrases, and they're things that we say ourselves. They're things we hear other people say, but they're not things that we need to keep believing. And I think that that's that's where the hope comes in, is that there's a simple process for helping us recognize some of these things that are holding us back and reframing it so that we can move forward.
Okay, I'm getting a little more hopeful now. And you mentioned a process, and I really am curious now. Can you walk us through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be easiest to illustrate if we walk alongside someone that I have coached and kind of their process. I'm going to name him Bob because my daughter Abby was really into VeggieTales, and she wanted our son Samuel to be named Bob. So whenever I need like a name, I go with Bob. I don't know, it just stuck. So
I love it.
We'll talk about Bob. And for him, he had a couple of limiting beliefs he was listening to. So as we're talking about those key phrases, one of them was, I'm afraid. So he was afraid that he was going to lose his friends. The other was, others will think. So he was listening to others will think that I am ungrateful. So those were two key things that clued me in to the fact that Bob was listening to some beliefs that were holding him back. So then walking him through that process. So I would love to dive in with Bob's story if you're...
I love it. I love story time with Kathy.
Okay. Good. Okay, so my coaching with Bob, I'll try and keep it brief and not get into the months worth of coaching, but he revealed he'd made a list of potential increased asks. He needed to ask for increases, but he hadn't made any actions on getting to his list or even making those asks. So when I asked him why this was important to him right now, he answered he'd prayed about who to ask, and he felt like these partners had shown excitement and enthusiasm for his ministry and his mission, and that he still had this financial need. But he didn't want to seem demanding or ungrateful, and he even compared himself to a telemarketer. So the reason I asked him why it was important to him right now is when he can see, actually figuring out who I need to talk to, but going the step farther and asking for those increases, it actually is important. This actually is something that I want to do, I need to do, and I actually believe that God has asked me to do. Tying it back into that in the beginning is crucial, because otherwise what's the point? So that's why I asked that question. As we're thinking about the process, the first thing that we're going to do, I love either a good acronym or a good acrostic or something to make learning stick. And so I have an ABCD process to kind of make it like, okay, I can do this. These are the building blocks of how to go about the limiting belief. So we start with A.
I like it.
We're going to state what that adversity is. So we go to Bob. His adversity was, I want to invite some partners to increase their giving, but I will be seen as a telemarketer, seem demanding, seem ungrateful. So that was his adversity. So, okay, we're going to move on to the B. What is that belief?
Well, I'm curious, Kathy, how easy is it for someone to identify that challenge that they're looking at?
That's a good question. I feel like for myself, I have so many blind spots that walking through this process is very difficult on my own.
Yeah.
Some of it is we don't see the real world with 100%. We're subjective, I'll put it that way. And so I have my lens that I'm looking through the world. And so sometimes I can walk through this process on my own and get to this is my adversity. And sometimes it will elude me. And that is where coaching comes in, having someone else with that outside perspective to ask me those questions to help me get to that point of, okay, this is actually the A. This is the adversity for that limiting belief.
Okay. Yeah. I can definitely echo that. It's helpful, I think, to do some self-evaluation. I think that is always such a good thing, but always, always, always so helpful and so encouraging to have someone walk that with you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's why I'm a coach. Absolutely.
Okay. That's A, on to B.
Okay. So once we have stated the adversity, we're going to identify the limiting belief. So that B is for what is the actual belief behind it. So for Bob, it was, okay, remember, we're listening for the I can't, the I shouldn't, the I'm not good enough, all of those kind of phrases. For him, it was, I can't do it. Not only will I lose the partners that I do have, I will lose their friendship as well. So that was the belief that was holding him back, keeping him stuck.
Yeah. And I'm curious, do you remember what was it like for him to verbalize that?
I think as he verbalized the belief, at this point in the process, he was still holding on to it. It still made sense. It was still I can't do it. And he's still believing I'm going to lose the partners I already have. I'm going to lose their friendship. They're going to think that I'm ungrateful for the partnership that we've already had. So at this point in the process, he's still pretty firmly holding on to that belief.
Okay.
It's the next step in the process where I could see it start to break down for him.
Okay, so what's the next step? We're on to C, correct?
Yes, we're on to C. So the C is being aware of the consequences. So that C is for consequences. And for Bob, because of this belief, he didn't try to make any increased ask. He was closed-minded about the whole thing. He didn't open up himself to creative ways to get it done. He didn't ask for help. This is a big one. I find myself guilty of this one. This is probably my number one that keeps me stuck, not asking for help. He didn't make time in his schedule to accomplish it. And then he always felt bad about himself when he would consider the idea and think of, oh, well, I know that this is what God is asking me to do, but I'm not doing it. And so then it was kind of this guilt and this shame that kind of kept him also stuck in this icky kind of loop, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that the consequences is really asking about the current reality, not necessarily the future of what will happen if you believe this, or does it do both?
You can absolutely take it to the next step and look at the consequences of, so what will happen if you don't follow through with the increased ask. We did get to that as well, and looking at, okay, you said that this was important for these 3 reasons. So what will happen if you don't follow through? I feel like that actually is a key question to explore as we're looking at the consequences to help start to shake loose that deep-seated belief.
Oh, wow. I'm loving this. This is like, I'm starting to see it's like the natural progression, but also like, yes, this is going somewhere. I'm getting excited.
All right, so once we have figured out what the consequences are, we're going to dispute that belief. So now that I've helped Bob to identify what is the limiting belief is, I'm going to ask him questions to help dispute the belief so that then he can overcome those beliefs. So as we go back to Bob's limiting belief was, I can't do it. Not only will I lose the partners I do have, I'll lose their friendship as well, and I'll be seen as ungrateful. So starting with asking, why do you believe this? Mm-hmm. So now that I've helped him to identify the limiting belief, asking him why he believes it until he runs out of answers. And so this is where you want to channel that inner 3-year-old and just keep asking why, why, until on the other end, it's like, as the parent, and you're like, I don't have any more. Like, you just want to keep asking why until they run out of answers. It really does feel like you're a toddler with them.
How many people get annoyed with you at this stage?
Sometimes they do, because as we're talking about this, these beliefs are deep-rooted, and we're often not aware that we are believing these things that aren't accurate, that are holding us back. And so uprooting them, it is uncomfortable. And so at this point, when you keep asking the why, you will have some people that are getting a little bit frustrated with the process until we get a little bit further in.
How do you know when your job of asking why is done?
I think most people come to a natural place in the progression where they just, you ask why and they say, I don't know, or there isn't anything else, or whatever it is. They come to this natural stopping point, and that's where it's kind of your cue to move on, to ask them, okay, so is there any truth in your belief? We're going to ask if there's facts that prove or disprove it. We don't want to just ask for things that disprove it, because sometimes that can do more harm than good, because often there's a little bit of truth with that belief. And that's why it's so powerful, because we've taken that little bit of truth and we've allowed it to grow and to become something that it's not, so that it holds all this power over us. And so if we don't at least acknowledge, hey, yeah, here's the truth over here, then it makes it really difficult to dispel the belief that's holding us back and keeping us stuck.
Wow. I'm curious, what's the importance of asking all the why questions instead of just jumping to the, is this true?
For me, I have seen that it is part of the process. I think sometimes people have believed something for as long as they can remember, and they don't really know why. So it could be that you ask this first question of, why do you believe this? And it kind of forces them to think, okay, why do I believe this? And sometimes you won't even get a first answer out of them, because it's, maybe the first answer is something like, I've always believed this. I'm not sure where this came from. And so you're looking for insight for you as the coach. You're looking for insight as to how deep this belief goes, because if they automatically jump to, gosh, I've just believed this for as long as I can remember, you know that it's going to take some more work, and it may not be like a one and done like we like. So it may be, okay, so we've done some great work today, and we're going to continue the process next week. So I think for me as the coach, it provides insight as to how deep the belief goes, but I think for the coachee, it provides insight for them as well, because there's something really powerful when I say, you know what, I'm not sure where this came from. I have believed this as long as I can remember. Or going through you're asking, I'm giving answers. It's taking me through that process, and often taking me to the end where I'm seeing, oh, you know what? I start to have this realization going through the process of, this isn't quite right. So there's something about that process for both the coach and the coachee that provides crucial insight for both.
Yeah, I think something I'm hearing about it too. So I'm much newer to coaching than you, Kathy. And so it is still something I'm very conscious of working to lean into, is asking questions instead of thinking I know the answer. And so letting the coachee lead that conversation and being a really good listener. And so what I'm hearing is like all that asking why would help me not jump to the assumption. Even if it seems mostly correct, it's helping the other person lead the way to the correct assumption. Yes. Of what actually is the limiting belief. And I think maybe my experience is usually that I wasn't wrong that there was a reason, but maybe I didn't quite have it in the exact right spot. And so that is really helpful to make sure I'm not jumping ahead and trying to drag them with me to here's the problem. This is what you need to fix.
Well, and there's nothing like fixing the wrong problem, right? So we help we think we're helping our coachee, but we have inserted, oh, I know exactly what this is. I know why you're believing this. I can help you, uproot this right now. And 3-4 sessions later, they're still struggling, and we're wondering, hey, we went through this process. I'm not sure where the disconnect is. Often that's the disconnect.
Yeah. That's great. I love it. And I'm wondering if we already had E. Did we skip E? Did we already cover E?
Well, we're not quite done with the D. There's a couple more questions.
There's more.
Are helpful. I know. So asking what evidence proves your belief to be wrong, we want to focus on that, because most beliefs are just that. They're beliefs. And beliefs and facts are two very different things. So we do want to look at, okay, so what evidence proves your belief to be wrong? From there, we want to ask, what are they afraid of? Because most fears boil down to being rejected, being humiliated, being embarrassed, isolated, you name it. So asking our coachee, what's the worst possible thing that can happen if you challenge this thinking? And then the last one in this step is asking, what would you gain if you overcame this limiting belief?
I love that question.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I mean, that's like, I just feel the whole tone shift, because I think we're all in a place that we're looking at a reason that we're feeling stuck. We're trying to move forward. We're challenging our thinking. We're trying to stretch our perspective, but to suddenly dream of, what if this barrier was gone?
Yeah.
That feels nice.
Yeah. And that is what takes us to that E, which is the last one. It's the energize yourself. So as we're thinking about, okay, so I've held this limiting belief. My coachee has held this belief that has kept them stuck. So now we've examined it. We've looked at it. We've looked at the possibilities. We've uncovered it, and that's all wonderful. the E with energizing yourself comes in with, okay, so how can we restate this? How can we say this so that this is now a true statement? So as we're talking about Bob, and he's going through thinking about his increased asks and all of his fears, and looking at, okay, we've looked at what is your proof, what is the things that disprove. Let's look at that evidence. And he went through, he had supporters that were offering, hey, however, you let us know in the future, however we can help, we want to help. And so he had some pretty solid evidence that he had partners that were willing to go further with their partnership with him that he was ignoring. And so then to look at it and make a new statement that gave him the energy then to move forward and say, okay, so this is the truth that I know about increased asks for my situation. For him to look and say, I have partners who on their own volition have come to me, right? How often does that happen? Wish we all had partners like this, but have come to me and have said, I would love to, however you need me to, support you. If you have people who need to be trained, if you have this, if you have, we're not even sure what all the needs are, but keep me in mind. Putting that into his new reality, his truth of what the situation was, so that it could energize him to actually make a couple of action steps to move forward, to get going with the increased asks.
I love that. Okay, here's a question.
Yeah.
Does it always work?
I mean, you have already uncovered some of the, I don't know if I want to say dangers, hiccups, I don't know what a good word is. Some of the ways that that we as coaches, especially, I'm speaking to you as coaches, that we can sabotage the process. When we make assumptions, when someone starts saying, oh, I believe this, and we jump to a conclusion of, oh, I know exactly what's going on, and we try to lead the process, you hit on that. That will derail this every time. And I think another thing is not having the patience. So as we're going through the process, and we're getting a realization for, oh, this is something that you have believed for as long as you can remember. For me, if I'm thinking, okay, this is one and done, we have gone through the process, and now Callie is not going to ever believe this ever again, then that is also where we can sabotage ourselves as coaches and our coachees if we're feeling like this is it. We've done the work and now it's done. I think not being afraid to go, yeah, we did some really great work and we are starting to really weed that out, but it's going to take a few times, and not be discouraged that looking at the progress that was made. Hey, so you were absolutely stuck, not making any progress, going around in circles, however you want to put it. And now look at that. You were able to move forward and you got these couple of action steps done. But we also need to revisit, because it seems like this belief is creeping and we need to continue to do some work on that.
I'm hearing those potential hiccups, and I think those could be especially true if you're walking through this process by yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
And not realizing that you're jumping to a conclusion, especially because it'll be your own conclusion from your own self-examination, and not realizing what's creeping back in. And I just hear so much more again, the value of not walking through support raising alone, not walking through, just the challenges of life alone. Good heavens, I don't think we were created to do that. So I think that just really reiterates the value of community, the value of presence, but also the value of a coach who is leaning into some of these really good coaching skills of asking good questions, letting the process work, not rushing it, and having that awareness through a longer process, not just a one conversation, but this ongoing journey that someone is raising support through.
Absolutely.
And anything else besides the few hiccups before people just jump on this bandwagon and say, I've got the A through E, I'm good to go. And anything else we should know or do or?
I think that I have seen this process work with so many people who, we talked about some of the beliefs in the beginning that support raisers say, and to look at somebody who goes from the, whether it's the I can't do this only works for extroverts, or I'm afraid for XYZ, I'll lose my friends, or I'm afraid this or that, or others will think this about me, whatever that belief is, seeing people being able to break those down so that they can become unstuck, if you will, is something it's not just empowering for them, it's amazing to be part of that process. So I think going back to your word in the beginning of hope, I think that this process really provides hope, not just for our coachee, but for us as coaches. And just be patient with your coachee, be patient with yourself, and really ask the Holy Spirit for discernment, for insight. Pray for your coachee before you meet. I feel like those are some crucial things that I don't want to leave off, but I really have seen this process empower so many support raisers.
That is beautiful. Oh. Well, I feel encouraged. I also am a little sad that I don't have someone to go and practice on immediately. Any last thought for today that you might have for us, Kathy?
I just think that if you are feeling stuck, there's hope. There are coaches out there. Like Callie said, you don't have to walk this alone. VIA has resources. You can reach out to us. We'd be happy to connect you with a coach who can help you walk through this process. If that's you, hopefully you're hearing the importance of community, the importance of coaching. There's hope on the other side. Yeah.
And I'll give a shout out to coaches. If you're hearing this process and it is almost like a foreign language of, I've never thought about working through coaching in this way, asking these types of questions, or having like a more specific process that will maybe not better equip, but be a better functionality for a conversation to get from a place of being stuck to a place of being able to take a step forward. That is what I think being equipped as a coach is all about. It was one of my epiphany moments that I think coaching skills are something that we all want in life. Like, it feels like it should be intuitive and natural. It is the most beautiful way to have a conversation with another human being ever. And yet I'm pretty sure it's the opposite of intuitive skills as far as what comes naturally. Blame the fall, blame sin, I don't know. But it was just so amazing when I discovered there are ways of approaching coaching that are much more effective, and it's not that hard to learn to make such a difference. You don't have to be scrambling to figure out how to ask good questions, what to say, how to help someone move forward. There are tons of tools and resources. Kathy just happens to be my favorite. I'm biased though. But I don't want you leaving, if this is the first time you've kind of encountered this approach, this way of coaching, and thinking that there isn't more, that you can't dive into this whole world of helping another human being move forward in a simpler way, an easier way, a better way, as opposed to you feeling like you're dragging them up a mountain behind you. Don't do that. You don't have to. There are so much better ways that actually feel so much easier as a coach. But at least to me, we're not natural at all. So do some research, get some training, get some tools. It's so worth it. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us. This has been delightful, and just one more tool in the toolkit for support raisers, for coaches, for leaders, for everyone. If you are living, alive, and breathing, this is a great tool for you. So thank you, Kathy, and thank you for bringing your expertise to the SRLC. It is a joy to have you join us and to share some of your wisdom and insight.